Sometimes I wonder about my legacy, and if I was to die today, would anyone remember me? Would they play my songs, or would they hum the melody? Would they share my thoughts across the world for everyone to see?
All right, y'all, so before I start this episode, I want to thank everybody that sent me their condolences for the death of my brother. Really appreciate that. It's been kind of a rough week, but knowing my brother the way I did, he would want me to jump back in and do my work. So that's what I'm going to do. So on this episode of the Legacy series, I wanted to talk about how I met my first producer and also how instrumental he was in my progression as a musician. And like I said in the first episode, when hip-hop first jumped on the scene, it hit Baltimore like a bombshell. And a lot of people were participating in the culture. And not just the rap part either, there are other elements of hip-hop that are less recognized nowadays. Now the focus is mostly on music, but back in the day, all aspects were acknowledged as equally valued, from the DJs to the breakdancers to the graffiti artists and the rappers, of course, themselves. All of these things were integral parts of hip-hop culture. And everywhere in Baltimore you would have went, any neighborhood you would have went in, you'd have saw somebody or some people engaged in some form of hip-hop culture. Some of those forms of engagement were in the form of battles. DJs battled, rappers battled, and yes, breakdancers also battled. Sometimes it would be people in the neighborhood battling each other, and sometimes it would be whole neighborhoods battling other neighborhoods. It was crazy back then. In one such incident, my neighborhood, the bottom part of Emerson Village over in West Baltimore, was battling the dudes over there in the Walbrook Junction area of Baltimore. And for the record, I was not part of this battle. I was not one of the competitors there. I was merely just spectating. So the Walbrook Junction people, they came over to our neighborhood and they started battling down on Hilton Street. Overall, it had to be about 30 people out there. And the battle wasn't about anything but breakdancing, which is why I wasn't involved, because I'm not good at that. I have 2 left feet. And first, I'm going to admit my bias, all right? I personally think Emerson Village won. I mean, yeah, for a long time out there, it looked pretty even. But I think my homegirl Tanya, she swung it in our favor. She was the only girl out there that was participating in this battle. And they didn't even know she was part of it. And she comes jumping out there and she kills it. Absolutely kills it. And it caught them off guard. And the impact that it had on the people that were watching, I think, is what made it, to me, pretty clear that Emerson Village won that. But like I said, I'm biased. That's my hood. So you can take that with a grain of salt. Also, I'm old, so my memory is subject to all kinds of discrepancies when it comes to small details. But to my mind, to my memory, we won that. Emerson Village won that. One of the competitors on the Walbrook Junction side was this big dude. He had on his black and red Puma sweatsuit, and for a big guy, he could move. He was doing all of those fancy moves that the smaller guys were doing. He was doing it, but he did it with ease. So, they had the battle. It was fun. I definitely enjoyed it, and I wish they did more stuff like that now. So months down the line, I saw that big guy again in the neighborhood, and I recognized him instantly. So I went over there and I talked to him. I was like, hey, yo, wasn't you one of those Walbrook Junction breakers that came over here for the battle? He was like, yeah. So he introduced himself to me. His name's Shawne Black. So we got to talking, laughing. Now, one of the negative aspects of back then, and again, I can't speak too much for it now. I haven't lived in Baltimore in like 10 years. But one of the negative aspects about back then was that if you went to a neighborhood and the perception of the people in the neighborhood was that you didn't know anybody there, nobody knew who you were, bad things could happen. That's just the way it was. Something like that almost took place. Like I said, I don't want to give too much detail, but let's just say that Shawne Black was almost forced to do something really ugly to somebody out there because they approached him on that negativity about you not from around here, who said you could come around here and all this. And the reason that he was even around there in the first place is because he had family that lived on that block. So it was just the whole thing. I'm glad it wound up getting dealt with without resorting to violence, but it came very close. So I didn't see Shawne again for a couple of years. And then one Saturday, we were all on the field playing football. And usually with us, because we were all such big fans of wrestling, the football game would eventually be reduced down to this battle royal of people just throwing each other around, slamming each other around. It was like that. And it was a bunch of us on the field doing that, having a good time. And I see this big guy come bounding down there on the field. It was Shawne Black. I was like, yo, I ain't seen you in a while. You right here visiting your family? He was like, no, I moved around here. I said, oh, that's what's up. So he showed me where he lived at, and I was like, all right, cool, I'm gonna come back and holler at you. So I went in the house, got myself back together, cleaned up after that game, and came back out, walked in, knocked on his door. We sat on his porch for the I would say the later part of the afternoon, all the way to like 10 o'clock at night, just talking about everything, wrestling, comic books, all kinds of stuff that we was into. That's when we start talking about the music thing. So we stayed all day longer talking about that. He told me he rapped. I was like, yo, I rap too. So I spit some bars for him. He spit some bars for me. He said, yo, that's dope. That is dope. We could probably start a group. And I was like, yeah, man, we just don't have no beats, but you know, we'll figure it out, use some instrumentals, make a demo. He was like, nah. I make beats. I have a beat machine. Now, I had never seen a beat machine in real life before, ever. And he took me in his house, he showed it to him, and he played some of the beats on there. And it was definitely dope, especially for that time period. And I was like, yeah, this might work. So that's what we did. We formed a group. And my experiences with him taught me so much about music because he was a lot further along with that. It was him that showed me how to listen to music the way someone that creates music listens, the way a recording artist listens, and not just the way a consumer listens to music. How to identify the different elements of a track and to be able to pick out the very things or elements in that track that's driving the track, that's making people like it, that's making people nod their heads. And I learned a lot of that stuff from him. Some of my first performances actually on stage, because before that, I was pretty much doing what most of us was doing, rapping around the block, going to other people's neighborhoods, rapping, you know, stuff like that. But I started really performing through my association with him. And I actually have a lot of stories about that, but I think I'm going to save them for the next episode. Thanks for listening. Talk to you guys later.